다 이슈양다 심제 탐제 당아절이야 지금 진침보레스 그진침보레스 지사 다 이진노블에 하바리 하베 김자 그랬으네 수수라랑게 세티기 당아절에 디기 소수사야 도야 튜냐가레나 셴 심제를 되네 용고도 안에 소수랑 개와사야 엔진비 냠내자 주림냠내자 수비 냠내자 된잠이제 하는 자주 셈 도스 냠내진에 타라 산지고만 토야디야 셴 심제를 되는 통부도 지난 셴 심제 세야데 마세랄이야 그진 침보지나 자 침보슈 지레샤스 온도스 지나간 쪽에 삼다 내가 저기 삼다네 되네 셴자 침보다 그진 침보인자 다시 심제디기 양은 저기 야지 and 무슨 잠바다 니시고 온도스지 고모 고려해서 온도스지네 디지 아니가 되지 쇼디고 싫어와.
Good afternoon. So this morning we started to look at this text 8 verses of mind training. I mean, the first verse emphasized the great kindness that sentient beings show us, both directly and indirectly. Or the way to approach the kindness they show us is to reflect on how they are kind to us both directly and indirectly. And the text mentions explicitly that they are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. And the reasons for this are fourfold. So the first point of the meditation is to reflect on the direct and indirect kindness that we receive from them in this life. For example, all the material comforts that we enjoy in this life has come about in dependence on the kindness of others. And the second way to reflect is that it's in dependence on others that we can accumulate the causes that will result in a good rebirth in our future lives. And moreover, it's in dependence on the kindness of others that thirdly, we can accumulate the causes that will lead to the attainment of liberation and enlightenment itself. And then fourthly, the reflection that all good qualities that we've achieved, all our vast stores of merit that we have achieved, we've cultivated this all in dependence on the kindness of others. And moreover, engaging in this meditation, it serves as the basis for the generation of actual love and compassion. So it's reflecting like this, we come to see the great kindness of others. We'll continue now with the next verse, which talks about how to avert the arisal of pride, because pride serves as a great impediment to the development of good qualities and the accumulation of virtue. So we'll look now at how to prevent its arisal.
That's it. Gando Sudan Tropice, Dani Kunle Mendashins, and Shenla Samba Tabai, Chodo Jeper Zimber shows.
Whenever I'm with others, I'll practice seeing myself as the lowest of all, and from the very depths of my heart, I will respectfully hold others as supreme.
Gando City, Gawa Deba in there, Gawa Droba in there, that medium do Shandanium do. Dachi two way in there, the new Deva in that draw in a draw in a such and the Gawa draw in a Shandanium the two do, and Delia, and Chick Ganto Sudan drop it, say, Tinigi Tuja, and Sosugi, and to drop your gala, and the Carchores and a Danikule Mandashins, Sosorandi, and the Shenley, and the Chiki, Shengi, Shenlia, the Yundenda, Shengi, Yundenda, and the Yapurism. And the Sosorandi, Shenley to start member of some town origin.
In brief, in this verse, should be understood that whenever I'm with others, and whenever would refer to not just time, but also place and whomever. So whenever, wherever, whomever I'm with, at all times, I will be aware of the good qualities that others have, and see myself as lower than them.
That 那当年过来蛮大些是的，叔叔让县里也蛮不大屋里，县里云南大屋里去了的。咱今年大完呢，叔叔让县里云南大去，叔叔让米县里的对，前面把这上百呢，叔叔的俺也几个嘛，是吧？你嘛上百呢，俺做叔叔云南了，新华大今年呢，叔叔来去米县那的，我当俺提醒个月，什么时候俺也给的，变成俺做俺也给的了，今年个叔叔个。云南来上当然也讲我的说是个苏布修钱不大的那苏多汤不大的那个得了的呢，我也讲那个说里啊边角的那有别头呢，我也讲这嘛了头呢，我也讲我了啊，这那啥的那个说是让个而且呢可来大个云南是不要或者个有的也不有了什么就先云南大，那说里啊，那就可能啊就是叫我来什么没把什么大为呢，那我也领。其实我也没给他到了，我这也没把上到我来去的。
So we saw in the first line that the term whenever should be understood in a far more expansive way than just referring to time. In the second line, I will practice seeing myself as the lowest of all. So here, we in the second line, it's specifically against guarding oneself against the risal of pride. And one does this by being aware of the good qualities that others have, focusing one's attention on their good qualities rather than our own. Because pride can arise in such an array of fields. It can arise in terms of one's physique, in terms of one's material resources, in terms of one's knowledge, something that one knows. So here, rather than focusing on one's own qualities, one looks at the qualities of others and does so as to limit the potential for the risal of pride.
Nipa shukche yugen zala samdan dang az o dang ay kor zil kyo are sambi samdan dang tumne dang de ro joro ba da da di men bege da soso le mi kyo a che da pe ji mi kyo ane subu kyo che pen jo thone kyo yuen de me de gan ji de tu we na da soso member da di o da mi de kanas member da wo re ko le de nga ya gre 가서 속도는 가야 연대는 가야 그래 변주는 가야 그래 사비 지상은 이 멤버 뒤때 갈래 가고 용사를 삼삼 요식을 봐.
Here then we're being encouraged that with regard to others to focus on their good qualities, not to look at their faults. So this can sometimes be a little bit difficult because it's not that others are free of faults, of course, that the faults of others can be quite apparent. But nevertheless, we are encouraged to focus our attention on their good qualities rather than their faults.
In
reality, ordinary beings possess many faults, but they also possess many good qualities. This is the case for ourselves and all other ordinary beings. But here the training is, though, not to focus on the faults that others may have, but to focus on the good qualities that they do have. So that's the training. It's not about denying that others have faults or trying to see them as free of faults, but rather focusing our attention on their good qualities.
코롱기 신기 하고 나오서 마신고 코롱 신비 연대 현다야 연구로와.
When thinking of someone, one can focus on their qualities or on their faults. So if we take someone who is, for example, materially, they're impoverished. So we can't really look at their material situation and focus on their good qualities because they're impoverished. And perhaps also physically, they have no particular great physical attainment that makes them stand out. But nevertheless, one can think perhaps that they love their children dearly, or they take care of their family in general. And that, of course, is a great quality. Or if with someone else, if perhaps they are on their own and they don't have family, for certain, they will have knowledge about something that we do not. And even if something doesn't readily spring to mind, without a doubt, they will know things that we do not know. So therefore, they have knowledge that we do not, and therefore they have qualities that are in these areas exceed ours.
And the Jigpa Champion to the Joseph Chili Leje and Missan Jig Tamil Poo Boyores. Cizan, you any quedan, call me then Chimboyora and me Jambore and that Poosolia Tonchu Tangoroa, Chipu Puji colors in it. Curon in there is in the shoe got Curon and yet your mares. Nanzu machine your Curon and then Mangu Yores Curona. Curon machine your Nanzu Shingo Mangu and then Yores Curon the Yundem. And how I'm to lay yours like Budi. The meeting hung at the Budi and then carry or something. You got another in the sheet how I mean machine you curing your carriers like it. Then a Budi and then land and then Curon game. Near Ami Mingaris your lad, curing you best. The Ami machine go on Savalero. She's an issue melody. Says Ami machine go as Curon him to us. Curon machine your machine go to us. She's an Ami machine go, the Curon him to us. In
this regard, there's a story from old Tibet, a traveler who had a great reputation because he's very learned, and therefore people widely knew that this person had many qualities. When he came to a village that he hadn't been to before, he was surrounded quickly by many children, and they perceived that perhaps this person was quite full of themselves. So one of the children said to the traveler, "Don't regard yourself as better than us. We may be children, but we know many things that you do not know." And this traveler then looked at them and said, "What do you little scruffs know that I possibly, that someone like myself could not?" And so one child looked at him and said, "Do you know the name of my mother? I know the name of my mother. I bet you don't." And the child was quite right. This very knowledgeable person had no idea, but of course the child knew. That is immediately apparent, and we can see that all children, therefore, will have qualities that we don't. And if young children have qualities that we don't, then of course those that generally we would look down on, say those who are destitute, they too will have qualities that we lack.
Dine samdai, dine zada nga chugi ngi ma shin go yin ko yin de shin gyo yor je za nga khole an ji ge nga ye ge wa ki ne de ge no sam du chen nga ya ma an je ma ki ya ja ya da an yang nga chugi de ki sho ge she ba na shin an da mo ne koron le de ne nga chugi kar se wo se ne jam ni ji ko mya ra da an koron gi yin ji nga zu le jam ni ji ko mya ra 코로나 기인지는 아주 진비님의 제야라고 봐. 아니 서버콤이라고 봐. 수림 손요 고급라고 봐도 아니 코로나 때문에 용도와 지상 코로나야 안솔에 연된 계주기 막뭐 계주의 누바데 코로나도 지상 안솔에 계비기 냠는 제기 고급라데 코로나 때문에 라기도 지상 콜도 연된 데니스도 지상 데니기 빼야고로와 선배기 삼단에 담바이나 안저야 콜이야 안저기 나야마 얘기 잡아용고로와
So this is one technique to train against the arisal of pride, being aware that all others have good qualities that we don't yet have, or they have good qualities that exceed what we have. And the second technique is similar to what we looked at this morning. When one is reflecting on the kindness of others in those four ways, kindness of others in terms of this life's comforts, that independence. Secondly, on others we can accumulate the causes for good rebirths. Thirdly, the causes for liberation and enlightenment, as well as all our own inner good qualities come about in dependence on others. When we have reflected well like this, then whomever we meet, we see this person as a cause for our liberation and enlightenment. See this person as someone towards whom we can practice ethics, we can practice generosity, patience, and so forth. And therefore, in dependence on this person before us, we can accumulate the causes for enlightenment. And so if we have trained well in the kindness of others, this way of thinking can be applied to everyone we meet, no matter whom they are, no matter whether we know them at all or not.
랑 원에 줍제 내 되니기 아니 유시인 마신과다 되니 균매바데 윤림매바데 차려요 말해서 지사디 내가 겐지 체제 되는 차가래 마도 셈유고 랑기 상신이야 아니 뭐 교와저 균이 마고봐 야 상기 설고 저 조투에게 누버디 예디겐지 예디레 지사디니자 Simply Russian in the Yoga Basic Yahuda Simply some time, Tawina, Yunding do Stavina, Magic, and Arz Delia Mipiki, like Yamaki.
The third technique is when one does observe faults in others, is to remind ourselves that those faults are adventitious. They have come about independent on causes and conditions. They do not define that person. These faults that we observe are fleeting, they're temporary. They've just come about in dependence on various causes and conditions. They do not define the person. If you want to think about then who this person is, we remind ourselves that they have Buddha potential. This is a being that has the potential to become a Buddha. And this is a far more realistic way to relate to the person than to exaggerate any faults and see them as being pervaded by a particular fault.
Do some direct. And then in the do some dash, do some direct in it. Shanla somebody, Shanla Samba Tabai, Chodo Jabba Zimbor Show, said it. The show Shabana, Tisan Shangi, then Shala Samba Taba is it. Tisan Shan Pa Yunden, the Nichi to Yunden Da, the Nigi, Yunden Da Tone, and the Jig Rang Chisingi, somebody, Yunden Da do, or the Shandy Bear, Massacring Chimboda, Za Chimboda, Chick, Koran to Simdi near Sangi who want more good Rumegi, and Nubu again, Simdi, Massa Yahuresha, Tisan, the Higi Chane, Yahore, the Ninja, and Around Mahazuki Kiwi Yamlin Chela, Dishi, Sheba Sobada, Sujimda, Jimbi Yamla Chela, then Jamni Jukom, Gohapra, the Nichi, Consulate Dinner, Yamla Chela, Gohap, Massa Yahuresha, Samjin, Shiala, Samba Taba, some of the new stars, and then Della Chodo Cheba Zimba, she also did sugar Nashi, Bemas Zachibota, Shen said, 자 침부지다 깨진 침부 휴지래샤 세상 되네기 내 콜리아 통중 당지 나게가 나 지우가 있는데 콜리아 통중 당 나게 깨지 되네기 콜리아 아니지 마하와치야데 김천데 너출래샤 된상 콜 나한테 진침부 깨진 침부인자 콜리아 잠바단 제와 제와야 되래샤 쓰네 어두스네 라 제바 짐비고 짐고 그래지
The last two lines of this verse, and from the very depth of my heart I will respectively hold others as supreme. So here's the aspiration that having reflected well on the kindness of others and being very aware of the dangers of affliction such as pride, one is training one's mind so that whenever one meets someone, immediately one is aware of their great kindness, what we trained on in the first verse, as well as knowing that they have good qualities, whether they are apparent to myself or not. They have an abundance of good qualities, and moreover, then thirdly, they have Buddha potential. This is a being who has the potential to become a Buddha for the sake of others. This is a being that has the potential to become a bodhisattva and work alongside all other bodhisattvas to free all beings from suffering. This is the potential this being before me possesses. And then fourthly, this being presents me with the opportunity to accumulate vast stores of virtue. So independent on this being before me now, I can accumulate the causes for a supreme state of enlightenment. So here, where one has trained well in reflection, in meditation, on this way of thinking, so that such minds spontaneously manifest when encountering others, one's mind immediately becomes very joyful and very distant from the possibility of pride or deprecation arising within us. But whilst we are training, before such minds spontaneously arise within us, then should minds of pride or looking down on others arise, if we have been engaging in contemplation such as described here, we can use these as steps to counteract the rise of pride. Remind ourselves before someone, when we notice a pride arising, this person before me has tremendous qualities. Whether I'm aware of them or not, they do. This person presents such kindness to me in this life, in future lives, in terms of my spiritual progression. And independent on this person, I can generate love and compassion. So if we've been training but haven't yet developed our training to the point where it spontaneously arises, we can intentionally generate it when we meet others and we notice the rise of affliction such as pride.
All right. I didn't that Shan la Jeba Tsingori said that Janju Sempa Namki and Anzuki Yamlen Jie, or the Shan cheese in Shan la Jeba Zimbe Samlo died. He some tango the Gumje Gade Lamna, Ranga Jeba Zimbe Samlo the Guru Do, or Sizan Anzuki Gawa Drup said, Digway Meva so good said, the Yamlen Jie said, Anzuki Pene Chi Umubi Tone, that Yamlen Jie Meva. Sizan Yamlen Jie said, Samlo Nala, Samlo Tanji. Samlo di gyuwa tangwa di nyamne chiga sigurwa, samlo gyuwa tangwa kore. Ta ngana zula samlo kharasura, ngana zula ranga chi zingi samlo pe mazi shuk shimburwa. Chisa ranga chi zingi samlo digi, gidi ina ngana zula ranga chi zingi samlo digi, chigi shihaliya, kondra kiya re, ngakya kiya re, duyasha kiya re, nyomomba kiya, chisa ngana zula ranga chi zingi samlo dindi dili yungu re. Chisa ranga chi zingi samlo di pa nipa churu tang tuba ina, nyomo kiya di nipa chungru, nyungru. Nyomong gaze ke nyu droba ina nga juge che lam nyamlen che le ya droba sa dini enza nga juge ranga chizin samlo de nyomong gaze ke suna nga ge je ya de nga ge shuk chi mu ke da de sha khong ro ji je ba ina da nga juge mo ge ye jawa ji ya ni ba chung zhu ya da di gi di ba che di le da ma ra sa dini le yi wang ko wa ke wa le du ma ba to me ba nyong go ya cha di nyomong ba dini le go le da nyomong ba le so yong so zo di Ranchizing somebody live. She's a ranchizing somebody in the Buchon Diala, and Shenjebazim some of the Gombo Jambo. She's a Shenjebazim some of Gombo. The Shenjebazim some of the Gombala, I got Shenlia Yundin, Gumsen some of down. rāngli pāntō bāda kēdīn chēbō dā dīn chēbō yībī gyumchē yāne yādo samdā dū samdā yidū āni shihēndi zā chēbō dā gē chēbō yībā dā hā gō yidū āni dēli yā shihēndi yāgō chē hūdū sēmbē shāli yā jīki jamzē dī yōng tū rē shīsā shihēndi chēbā chēbō lū rēs lē rē shīsā dī yin zā rā jōdō gāsā wā shihēndi chēbā jīngō rē sē dī gyumchē rō yī dī rē dā kāchē rāng chē jīng samlō dī shūk chōng dā yā rē dī shūk chōng dā nyō mō bā shūk chōng dā yā rē dā dā rā shī gō rwa.
For bodhisattvas, their primary practice is the cultivation of the other cherishing mind and the elimination of the contrary mind, which is the self-cherishing mind. This is the primary practice of bodhisattvas. And the reason for this is because what a bodhisattva is striving to become is a Buddha for the sake of others. And to become a Buddha, the bodhisattva is striving to transform their inner world. They're not focused on changing their outer world, but they're striving to transform their inner world, their way of thinking. Because it's through the inner transformation that they will be able to benefit others. This is the unique way that bodhisattvas can benefit others. Through generating bodhicitta and all good qualities, they can help others in the ways that ordinary beings cannot. And why then, in particular, is the self-cherishing mind seen as the abandonment of the self-cherishing mind, the primary object or practice of a bodhisattva? Well, this is because the self-cherishing mind is pervasive within us. And it's from this ever-present self-cherishing mind that all our afflictions arise. Every affliction, such as pride or anger, attachment, comes from the self-cherishing mind. So therefore, all these minds that arise and lead to the accumulation of non-virtue, lead to harm coming to others, comes from the self-cherishing mind. And not only that, but to the degree of strength that the self-cherishing mind abides within one, to that degree the afflictions will arise in terms of both frequency and strength, and thereby limit the attainment of good qualities. In particular, in the context of a bodhisattva, good qualities such as love and compassion. So therefore, the bodhisattva focuses on eliminating the self-cherishing mind, because it's from this that all the afflictions arise. And at the same time, they focus on cultivating the other cherishing mind, the mind that cherishes others, because to the extent that the other cherishing mind dominates, good qualities such as love and compassion can arise, both in terms of strength and frequency. So therefore, this is the focus of bodhisattvas, and they do so by meditating repeatedly on the good qualities that others have and their kindness. And thereby, they are able to generate their other cherishing mind and love and compassion.
Now, the Mida, the Pujomachi, the Samdawine, and that, the Pujomachi, that you are to do mission that we are men and I yes, and I guess your Marama, Budroma, Tawene, then I also do some Tawene. Budroma, the Git and also some Tawene. Budroma, Koronzugi, Koronzurangi, Chasa, Chip Mangosium, the Zomche, Chebuchi, Tumbuchi, and Chik Koronza, Samusuya, and Kalaja, Chasa, Koronzo Tunum Tony, Chasa, Chik Bene, Descent, Chira Mobunium, the Zomche, Tumbuchi, Koronzo, Kala, Zizi, Jike, Sad, Martu, and Gunga, Namsha Jamboli, the Dinalama, Zuya, Chasa, Tushi, Koronzo, Tudu, then I was middle China. Then I was Milia, some of the Namjeshu, Beji, Dan Yudigan, Dachi, Sutu, Tachana, and Chabata, Davina. Then I had to give Pemasi Kozoli, the Buddha and also she would have a short shot. Yina, Nanzulia, larger than Beji, Mena, 나는 미래에 소수기 benengato loro da ngazo tunje shala ma de baina ane ngazo ge thone sosu jibu songgyupje je tuyage je de kala khaw shu ra je tuyage kala khaw shi kala khaw cha da jikre da ane dene za da nyomdu ngazo mi mangbo nyomdu som de we ne an tunbu ya chi Geshe Thubten ji ma le le dan ji ma le thone ya ji karene ji ma tin bo ya da de ne ki nyorama bol ya de de ne ki wa de ne ke sam ta we ne nga so le mi pe ma se ya ko re de yi ne khon so da je be ne khon so le chu je ja la da lo da be je da ka yo ma de khon so tho ne ka le jab ji de khon so ma sung gyup je da cha sa ji je tu e cha gi do da nga so la mi ya ko shu re de yi ne 지금 로다가 되는게 투제 잘라다 되는게 직 잘라 매버네 나서 랑기 되는지 투야디 갈래 하고라지도
The point of looking or being aware that others have good qualities, this awareness is something we need to cultivate, because often many people that we observe, we don't necessarily recall of their good qualities because they are not then and there apparent to us. So this is certainly the case for humans, and it's also the case with animals. So we don't generally talk about or think about the generation of pride towards animals, and possibly we don't generate pride towards animals, but we certainly don't value them. Not in the same way as we value others. For example, ants. One doesn't tend to value many insects, and certainly not ants, and one would look down on them and think they don't matter very much. But they have many good qualities that we don't have. Look at, for example, what a sturdy home they can develop that can withstand such a variety of weather. And they build that with very limited skills at their disposal. Moreover, they live in large communities, in harmony together. We struggle to live in harmony together just within one small family. They live in large colonies together. So here too we can see a quality that they have that we don't have. Moreover, they work with such diligence for their community. And also, they have great strength in proportion to their size that we lack. So even something as minuscule and what appears to us as insignificant as ants, they have great qualities that in certain areas far exceed us. So if we can think like this in terms of ants, certainly we can in relation to other animals and other humans too.
아니 코로나 가와 뒤에네 디사지트 바 뒤에 아니야 심지 가시 코로나 사야동 얘기 돈달라 소셔제 수에네 사야를 지구로 와 나도 미기 가르치고로서네 랑 제진 삼노티기 대 룸바 사지 가와 뒤에네 소수게 지게 배 남주에 배시에 나지네 나가는 저기 되네 천자 수야 다되네 리망고지 배수에서 미치게 삼로디기 점리 샤상 추추주제 미샤상을 강하게 수고로 미치게 삼로 다제 디체고선 그 남주 배셔 다제 되네게 지금 누자지 야가지 배주체인데 판도 침부로 와 매데 되네 야가 배주마다 누가 질 삼다 거 기시에开와제 되네 시에네 되네 차상 점리 샤상 파체네 되네 막소자다 요라자다 lumbu 차상을 강하게 하다 체고로 그래서 미디게 삼로 되네 지토네 랑 제징에 삼리 토네 다 소수의 이유인다 점리 타는 거 쇼이네 대설 약간 아시고 대두고 봐다 다 부로마도 저거 델도마도 타는 것네 강아 수질이 강아테 돼요 말이야 지금 말 되네 삼다베는 부로마디베 부 탑교 쇼지 가고 삼다마신 탑교 쇼지래데 다 되네기 나서 남주에 가 삼당한 되기 콘솔에 내가 누가 먼저기 밀리아 강아테야 랑 강아서 하잔 상마라 강아테 두제 내가 누가 뭔고 먼저 민수기도 와서 지자당에서 코리아 순교비나다 남시티게 쪼고서야 돼서 민수들이 그러마도 뭐 샘징에 수고 말아 되네서 두스네 삼다베이나 지상 나눠주기 교회 나서를 교배 망고두스 지상 콘솔에 가서 교인체두스 되네게 나 그런 미 연대에 그런 배야 고로 현달에 저기 되네게 녀석 침못 마기 받지 그러면서 제투가 약보랬으면 되네 삼다에는 소수기 교인이 삼다 관주의 연대 삼다에는 되네가 저기 술리네 다양도 오다 아니 인제서 받아는 거 저기 가서래 소소 나야마게 개발이 용구로와
The colony of ants were to be moved somewhere far from where they currently are and placed in a new area, what would they do? How would they deal with this? Well, they would establish a new home, and whilst that was being done, others would go out and forage for food, clear up the floor of dead insects, and thereby be able to feed their colony, and whilst others in the community are building a home. And that's what they would do. Wherever one were to place them, that is what they would do. Some would create a home, others would get food, and they would get on with their lives. Humans, on the other hand, with our far greater intelligence, whenever we've gone to a new land, what do? We try and establish our dominance, we push others away, we establish ourselves, and we engage in a lot of conflict, both with the natural world and other humans, anyone that we deem as a threat to ourselves. We try and dominate and, if necessary, annihilate. Thoughts of world domination, I'm pretty sure, don't arise to ants and probably not to any animals. But to humans, this use of intelligence to make conflict, and conflict certainly these days in ways with great power, this is something that we do readily. So the purpose of reflecting like this is to counteract the habit of not regarding so many beings and looking down on so many types of beings. And also to develop the habit of looking at the good qualities that others have, even those whose good qualities don't readily appear to us. But to be aware that whomever we encounter, they have an abundance of good qualities, and many of which exceed ours. And that's the second point of thinking like this. One is to firstly to remind ourselves that whomever we meet have an abundance of good qualities. And secondly, some of those are far more developed than our own. And here we're seeing, as in this verse, we're holding others as supreme in that they have good qualities that we don't. And therefore, we're seeing ourselves as lower than they are.
Samno de Carson Ranching some of the Rubata. Ranching is some of the Carson Soso Rana, Jabats, Sosolo Majichimu, Sosu, and Jalia, that mini, that Tapshi Pezitan Zigurva, Karachin Yagidu, Console, Ganes Meva Sena, Suena, and Garana one chair at and around to Nubache Chasare. It's now called Meva Suela, the Tranjala, some Denisio, who said, Denig Tranjari Suere, that Deni Yaji to give. 春夏马水为呢，从头的是这么大的，那第二的春夏上马这个从头的水果了，从东野到达了，说是了边角，俺来边角过的，俺边角呢，俺居住不起来的，俺边住我这往哪请不起来的，你那些那个什么的，那个从东野到达了，那这加拉水，但是女个到达了，咱马来必须大爷到达了，特别是咱马来这必须大爷水的，俺这些，俺地面比个，但是那个。你样就说出个所找的，今天主要这个呢，但说出个边角对象，让俺边角全部的，俺举全部去，俺举全部，俺往哪全部，俺接着全部是股子上面，你那上面大家这个就从来起的，白嘛是但是靠变成靠有了，你们呢，马大瓦街，俺这俩那这个俩个，这个咱们的说咱们的这最后的，俺那靠有了呢，那现在呢，这啥的用过了吧？第七章都俺就新旧结尾呢，在于考那个是呢，但让基金上了的利用的，但现基金上了结尾呢， Shen Jeva Timber Samlo Jeva, Shanbe, Yapor, Jana Nuna, Tigimara, Shana Yap, Uri, Sambe, Samlo Shuchim Jobana, Digi, Lega Karacheven, Shana Nubi, Chanja, the Suguma, that in something. Chanjas or that Sunja Servan, Mishan Sugar, Shan, Gamati, Nugra, the Yapamundus, Sugumarwa, the Lega Chunjik, the Sugumarwa, and the Maja and the Kori Chishanda, Song Rosine, Shan and Nubi, Jayu Tone, Song Chimbo, Jigmar, so Raja, Korius. She would near the Shalia Kama Shuja, Chavan, or that thing is driven, Koyu and Mima, me, and Semje, Dulu Mongolia, Kamachi, Kamachi, the Yaminu, some J, and she enches in some lotigi, and Shannon Nubi, Java Chasa, Mabuchi God. The ranches in some lotigi, Shannon Newman, some Matan, so like her, so get the Giga, so you get a Chimore, sometimes she enches in some Bitonia, and another Ben, or Kamachi at the Chasada, that didn't go.
Reflecting in this way helps to limit the rise of pride, and as well as looking down on others. And it's all part of the process of coming to know ourselves better through looking at our motivation. And as we look at our motivation, we come to see that it's our way of thinking, which is the primary cause that leads to the results that we experience. Here, in this context, we look at the role of the self-cherishing mind. That it's a self-cherishing mind from which all the afflictions follow, that lead us to want to dominate a situation, what leads us to want to get our own way, have things go the way that we want. It's this self-cherishing mind that motivates us to take advantage of others, to deceive others, to manipulate others. And this we see playing out in all walks of life, whether in the home or in the community or between nations. And of course, we see this clearly in the world of business too, where in order to achieve wealth and success and power and influence, someone will decide to go into a particular area of business and will make all the decisions they do so as to achieve the fulfillment of what they want. The motivation is primarily their own success as they understand it. And whatever a realm of let's say employment they choose, there'll be varying degrees of focus on outcomes that benefit others or not at all. But primarily, the other cherishing mind ensures that the outcome of activities benefits themselves first and foremost. And if benefit comes to others, that's fine, but primarily to oneself. And loss should not come to oneself. This is the role that the self-cherishing mind ensures or plays out. And we see this that in the world today, environmental destruction is apparent. Climate change is well understood. But yet, business decisions are taken by individuals every day that leads to intentional environmental destruction. And this is a very apparent decision taken by or under the influence of the self-cherishing mind. So we reflect like this in terms of ourselves and in terms of what we observe in the world to see the grave danger that the self-cherishing mind presents. Thereafter, we reflect on the great benefits of the other cherishing mind, thinking, how would it be if I was someone whom the other cherishing mind was dominant, or if in the world around me, if beings were dominated by the other cherishing mind? Because here, we'll be dominated by a wisdom that looks in fine detail at what the results would be of our actions, physical, verbal, and mental actions. And we would look at the results through the lens of the other cherishing mind. And where we saw harm would come to others, we wouldn't allow the justification of the other cherishing mind to deceive us, but valuing others more so than ourselves, we would ensure that we only engage in activities that benefited others, not thinking that the ends justify the means, not thinking that harm to some doesn't matter because benefit will come to those that I value. So here we're reflecting on the grave dangers and faults that follow from the self-cherishing mind, and the incomparable benefits that follow from being under the influence of the other cherishing mind. Now we're continuing with our text. When the text here links these two, the second verse we just looked at and the third we're coming to link very closely. The third continues to look at the arisal and the role of the afflictions play and how to deal with them skillfully. In all actions, I will examine my mind. At the moment a disturbing attitude arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly confront and avert it.
So that Jimju so the Sosogi Mula and the Jelamla, Shimju, yes, a Kidine, Jelam Gundo, Rangula, Dorching, the dogs, the Jebachevas, Dorchi, and Dorchi, and then Karicheva Chigures and Sosugula, Dengi, Sosogi, that some non the Karakudu, and then no mobile so Kondo Kigu, yes, if a Kondo Kigu, the Jebachia, and then I mean, William the Yosalia, do and Bendigo, and the check Nagaki would do medicine, some tire, and the Denishim Juchea, and the Sosorangi, Bendigo, and the Jeke, Mima, so you do Tubanata, Soso Chibu in the Tubanata, Sosukula, Nyomo, but Diocha, give you the Jebachea, two Genomo, Chigu, then Jebache or Ege, and Jelam Kundu, Rangula, Dodging City. Yenyo, Dodging, you might Yamatas, your more silver, Dodging, your more silver.
Look at the first two lines here. In all actions, I will examine my mind. At the moment a disturbing attitude arises. So firstly, then, in all actions, so we can understand this in a similar way to how we understood the first line of the previous verse, where we looked at whenever I'm with others. Here, in all actions, understand that wherever I am, with whomever I am with, whatever I am doing, and we can add whether I'm alone or with others. So in whatever situation we find ourselves in, whatever we are doing, wherever we are, whether we are with others or alone, I will examine my mind. So here, we always need to, whatever we are doing, whether alone or others, be aware of our mental process. Always be aware of our mental process. Why? The second line, and the moment a disturbing attitude arises. So here, we are always aware of our mental process, looking for the rise of, for example, pride, the affliction we were just talking about, or the other very common affliction of attachment or any other. So we need to, whatever we are doing, whether alone or with others, be aware of our mental process and guard against the rise of afflictions.
Nyomo Jelam Gudo Rangula, Doji, Nyomo Yamata, so that Denigi, that's Suzukila, Nyomo Kidu, Minus, and Java Shimjuche, Zulia, Shishin, or Shishin Gita, Shishin Bijita, Vada, Shishin Yumu Minus and Ayanchi Delia, and Sosotope, Sheraki, Java, or Delia, Nyomo Kyode, Kawanyomo, Kesa, Deliki, Tiniki, and Bigados, Sheraki, Java Chiata, all those in a Doji, said the Niki Java Chiata. That Shera, that Delia, that Jambaku, or it is a Jambata Shishin, the Sudoro, Chago, it is a Tenshi, Shishin, so that Dodge Java said, and you might give do Mindus Java, Amzatagan, Tadoshi, that you can do Shishin the Chago, it is a Shishin Demo, or Shishin Danger. You got that, Manso Gilina, Soso Jibuna, Gawa Dubine, this Sosukula, Numon Judu Mindu said, Shijin Pa Jebachi, Shijin Pa Daniel, and Dao Reso.
We have here the word examine. So we can understand this in different ways. We could have investigate, we could have analyze. So that should make it clear if we use the word examine or investigate or analyze. This is referring to a mind of wisdom. An analytical, investigating mind, an examining mind is a mind of wisdom. And in particular, it refers to the mind of introspection. It's a mind of introspection that is focused on our mind itself, seeing what is arising or not. Introspection is a mind or a mental factor we often hear in the context of introspection and mindfulness. So what we're seeing right near the beginning of this text here, just in the third verse, mindfulness and introspection are introduced. And it's been mindfulness and introspection are introduced in the context of in all actions, meaning that wherever we are, whomever we are with, whatever we are doing, we need to utilize introspection and mindfulness. And this is important. Through this, we understand that mindfulness and introspection we need to utilize at all times, whether not just when we are meditating, but whatever we are doing, whomever we are with. And it needs to be done at all levels of practice. It's something that beginners too need to rely on.
Shen si da da shen da shen sa rang da shen ni ga dunga sue da ganga zhe da di ganga zhe se ma jiu xie de su su go sen nyo mo ba di chi go de ji sa de ngang zu ge nyo mo ba de zhao wong ne de ngang zu nyo mo ba de ji sa nyo mo ba de nyo mo ngang zu le jie ba yin rang ma ji ba cha shan le ma ji ba sue da shen ni ga ma ji ba sue cha go de an di ma je an ne nyo mo ba de jie go de an ne le ngang ba sa 레가 바사네 아니 레가 바디 제보디 깨와 침마디야 아주 동안 용어야 차고래 제가 내는 코발에 깨야다 동안 용어야 차야돼 제가 녀모 바디 채고래 제가 녀모 바디 라샤 니가 아니 체데레네 아니 지기 내가 앞다 가와 있네 마기바 차야다 미팅 버서야 아니 디기 깨진데 아니 레가 바사데 깨와 침마이네 아니 가서 깨와야다 동안 용어야 차야돼 제가 녀모 바지기도 와 제가 라샤 니가래 독자 용어야 차야네 녀모 바치기도와 진짜 내 인자 나와서 가르쳐서 디기 구구를 동아 구구 말에 강아 제간의 구구 말에 진짜 강아 제간 용도 민도 다제 거 남자 용도는 거 매봐 써고야 돼 개치 못 차고 디네 인자 녀모 바 비디나 아주 쩨람 가와 되어버이나 가와 저거데 녀모 바 기기 뒤에 민도 심지 저거 봐 김제 가들라네 녀모 바디 라신니가 강아 지고 그래서 진짜 체디다 깨어치마 가제나 가와이네 강아 얘기 유리스고 디네자 아나가 타바다 탐제기비 산요고바 토발라야 코 바르시지고 남가 까고 그래 인자 디 다시지고 김센디 디로 와죠.
The reason that we need to rely on introspection and mindfulness, the reason that we need to examine our minds at all times is, as is presented in the third line, endangering myself and others. And this refers to the disturbing attitudes or the afflicted minds. It's these that are our true enemies, because it's afflicted minds that cause us our own mental disquiet, our own unhappiness, our own inner turmoil. It's the afflicted minds that harm us here and now. Moreover, through the expression of the afflicted minds, we harm others, we abuse others, we take advantage of others. So it's these afflicted minds that harm us now and harm others now. But the suffering that they lead to isn't only experienced immediately. It's through the abiding and the acting out under the influence of the afflictions that we accumulated negative karma, that, if it ripens and the propelling karma, will lead us to be reborn in the lower realms. And even if we are born in the so-called pleasant migrations, it's this negative karma that will lead us to experience suffering situation upon suffering situation. So therefore, it's the afflicted minds, and the afflicted minds only, that are our enemies. Our enemies are not external, they are these very minds. And they lead us to suffer now and in future lives, and under their influence, they cause suffering to others too. So we all want to experience only happiness. There's nothing special about that. And when we encounter something that we believe impedes our happiness, naturally, we try to eliminate it. So we need to develop our wisdom. We need to develop our wisdom to recognize truly what impedes our attainment of happiness, what leads us to suffer. This is imperative, because then we'll recognize what the actual enemy of our happiness is. Our actual enemy of being of benefit to others is our actual enemy to living a life of great meaning. And when we recognize that it's our afflicted minds, reliance on introspection and mindfulness, when we recognize the arisal of an affliction, we'll readily do whatever it takes to eliminate our true enemy.
That's 지가 타마들라 전답 돈에 도버 쇼서 대시 지가 니베들라 게마타세도 도전요모 게마타세도 수수요모 길레 게용도네 게로치드네 다 게용도네 남상 전답 상에 전답 돈에 도버 쇼서 베베주 체시 파 까고레서 파 매바서 그래서 전답 상에 도버 쇼 전답 돈에 도버 쇼서.
The final line, I will firmly confront and avert it. So this we understand in conjunction with the second line, and the moment, and so this first term, and the moment, or as soon as, or instantly. Here what is being stated is that as soon as the arisal of an affliction is noticed, we need to firmly confront and avert it, immediately so, and the moment means immediately so.
나 전답찬에 도버쇼 세다네 디네 인자다 간조 템바테디 게치무샤와 데시신디기 다 녀모바 기우디기 민도 삼타야다 델야 기네 남산 템바텐제 템바기 오데니부 디팅고 에세티 젠제 남산 콜리아 녀모바 기에디 콩로기에도 삼디당고레 심비 남산 젠투가디 고고르바 디네 아야지 되샤기도 오다 디팅고르 님보 되샤디 기로치 오다 되샤기우도 제상 디제나 지금 말해대 아니 다디 삼디 땅고레 세비기 템바디 제하다 아니 나게기야라 두스 제하다 진짜 잼비기 남상 아니 되샤 콘로 녀모바디 기여데네 녀모바 소소로나데 내가 그치 내가 그 매바서야야 가리 삼로 가르다니 매바서 고고요바디 안데 탑시디 고 템바디 젠투가 지고 고르바.
This verse then is about our need to rely on these two crucial mental factors of introspection and mindfulness. Introspection is a mind of wisdom. It investigates, analyzes, always aware of what is happening internally of our mental process. And as soon as it notices the arisal of an affliction, then mindfulness plays its part. So mindfulness, which can equally be translated as recollection or in other contexts, memory, mindfulness reminds us of the faults of the affliction that introspection has observed. So introspection will observe the arisal, for example, of pride. Mindfulness then serves to remind us that pride is an affliction. It presents grave danger. Pride is what prevents, for example, the attainment of good qualities. Pride, being an affliction, will lead to the accumulation of non-virtue. So mindfulness is what reminds us of that. The second part of mindfulness is it recalls, firstly, the faults of the affliction that introspection has identified, and then mindfulness, secondly, recalls the antidote that needs to be applied. So mindfulness has these two parts, recalling the fault of the affliction that has arisen, and secondly, recalls the antidote that needs to be applied.
Sabona jeba pangbala, sabona jeba meba se pangbala, dami bi tawa, tomba yi topi sherab komnamato, and sabona jeba de meba se tu mare. In a negap ko makia, ma gondoya, negap makia ma jaya, and another kudukudulia, and the answer Yabotina Kaka Ayumbure.
In general, when we talk about eliminating the afflictions, we need to, well, not in general, when we talk about eradicating afflictions, we need to understand that this has two meanings. There is the way to completely eradicate them, and that can only be done through the wisdom directly realizing emptiness. Here, what is being referred to is how to temporarily overcome the afflictions by applying an antidote that will temporarily eliminate them. So it needs to be understood that when it's spoken about eliminating afflictions, ideally we would eliminate the affliction together with its seeds, and that's only done through the antidote of the wisdom directly realizing emptiness. But in terms of temporarily overcoming the afflictions, there are many antidotes.
Garcongosne, Jamje Samtangores, I've been so been a Kansa Chile, Conrosarachi, and Kansa Telemici, Jamata Zewa, Samtawina, and then Conriki Mares, Chizania, Dus Chicaya, Jamje Samtangores. Chizan Jamje, Deji Jamje Samtadi, Deji on the Jumje Mongo Samta, Nashinda, Jamjes, Shandi, Rana, Chiza Chimbota, Kiri Chimbota, and Deshi Dennis Dus Yunde. And the Koranga Yunde want to do some time do, and then Jelia Jamjet, Jamjet, Jam Penkuro, Jamjet some Tampores, she's a Jamjet some tower in the Koraki Mares, she's a Nagap Conro Doyalia, go Jamjet some Tampores. The Koraki gains under the Kawa, that Koromai and Kirochi, Shijing, some time Shijing Jevach, the Korokisa, some Sunday, Namsa, and Jambaki change what I did, Korokisa to Delia, Korea, Jamjet some Tampores and big. Jamje sometimes generally gentle to go there. Change it in there, and Jamje some Tashavina, and the Jamje Comshavina, then already Gigo Marwa now got to go there.
For example, then the affliction of anger. Here, the antidote then to be applied, to temporarily eliminate anger, is that when introspection notices either the arisal of anger, that it's starting to arise, or notices that this is a situation where it may well arise, then mindfulness will remind us that anger poses grave danger, and secondly, that we need to apply an antidote. And the antidote one can apply is love and compassion. To apply love and compassion skillfully can only be done independent on prior training. So if we have engaged in meditation such as what we mentioned earlier, we reflect the great kindness that others have shown us, where we've developed a sense of holding others as dear, as feeling a closeness and an affinity with others. Then it becomes very easy to generate love and compassion for others. So this needs to be done. The application of the antidote of love and compassion needs to be done before anger has taken hold within us. Once anger has arisen, it's difficult to apply antidotes such as these because our mind has been overwhelmed by anger. So therefore, we need to have developed introspection well so that it notices anger as it's starting to rise, or even that notices that this is a situation where it may well do so. And we need to have developed our mindfulness well. In other words, we have come to recognize clearly the faults of anger, as well as know well, through meditation, the antidote, love and compassion.
당저기 되셔로시 기로치 교배나 아니 유가를 미제 유텔을 미비게 차과시키로시 교배네 다양한 주점고도 시시게 봐다시네 오다 유텔을 미비게 즉 차과시키로시는데 남사 이 오다 차과기 기를 기도 선배게 시신이 하고요도 남사 전비 오다 차과기나 될이야 삼도 뒤땅고래 선배 전바디 전도가지고 그러와 디네인자 말아줄이야 대리기 변에 유텔의 매도로 진행지고 성화시 될이야 차과시키로 다 매도로 지 캠냐지 매도니주 통화요로 와다 통화도 그블에 소수기에 삼나라의 시신이 술지기 시신이가 차과기도 되면 섬치 지파 소발마선도 스타디가 다 차과기요 받아 하고요도 기도 선배만 남사 매도들이야 전바디고 제인지다 오다디 차과기 될에 부디 띵고래서 미다와 삼다야 매도셔야 돼 오늘 지게 니조들이 되네다 미다와래다 남사 지게 철라도 쇼쇼 다와 띵부 가야 말에 선배기 미다와 삼다와이나 안델에 비 차바 도야 해봐요 우리 시선 미다와 삼다와 어디 미다부게 전바 전비게 전투 가지고 그래지래
with our mental factor of introspection, when I notice the arisal of attachment, then we need to apply independence on also using mindfulness, apply antidotes. So this affliction of attachment, this arises independent on the widest array of objects. So therefore, this is a particular affliction that our introspection needs to be ever vigilant against its arisal. Because for the most insignificant of things, such as a beautiful flower, attachment readily arises. When introspection notices the arisal of attachment, then mindfulness recalls the fault of attachment. Then it recalls the antidotes to apply. And an antidote against attachment would be impermanence. Recalling that the object is impermanent, its desirable qualities do not last, and therefore cannot lead to any lasting happiness. No matter whether we engage with it or not, it cannot lead to lasting happiness, but in fact only impedes it, due to the basis being attachment, an affliction.
And then 맞아야 즉 되니기 잡아 깨어도 안내 즉 시신이 다지 잡아 기여봐 기로지나 아우 잡아께서 삼다요도 레어도 하고도 템벨람사 나오다디 잡아기네 하고 말텔에 니버디 띵고라 삼제 아주기 미두보고미야다 미두보고고랬으면 되네 야지 유텔에 미제 미두보고바이나 아니 텔에 유텔에 미피 잡아디 이 말에서 지상 가도에 지상 도수 미두보고고랬어야지.
In addition to the antidote of impermanence, we can reflect on the unsatisfactory nature of the object, or literally its ugliness. So here we remind ourselves that the object doesn't exist as it appears. Its nature is not so desirable, it is unsatisfactory in nature.
샤네 통제 될이야 나게 기로 지도 삼나 시신에 수술에 나게 기요바 계산해서 배서 하는데 남사 될이야 아니 가지고 다 디마게 된다라 삼다야 될래 디네야라 중이게 삼다야다 아니 감 세변에 망보세 감세 저 감중이세다 감 죽주세다 디네기 토네 삼다외다 아니 가서는 망보지 삼다야도 망고사 남자 신발로 된 것이도 오다데네 칼에 마신바 망고도 선배 삼리요 소소 마신바 망고도 삼리도 뭐 내가게 마자로 그런 가게 자로 그러고 삼다나 진디셔고 진내 대시 셰바나 이래 샤를 미제 샤를 소소기 샤를 또 내가게 기회도 qabla 소소라게 신기 연된 따제 샤를 잠제 삼다 신기 연된 다오다 말하면 마신비기 아니 건조기 신기 연된 망포요래 삼지도 진 랑레 제 안에 랑레 야가 삼다 두스당면은 소소가 가게들이 말했으니 야가게 자로 그래서
when introspection notices the arisal of pride, the arisal of this, where we look down on others, seeing ourselves as having qualities that are far greater than this other person. Here, mindfulness then needs to remind us, firstly, that this is an affliction and therefore it is our true enemy. It is this mind now of pride that is impeding our potential spiritual development and, in fact, is leading to the accumulation of negative karma. Therefore, an antidote needs to be applied. And an antidote mindfulness can remind us of is to recall of the many things we don't know. So now we're seeing ourselves as puffed up and having greater qualities than perhaps another person. But for example, remind ourselves that the 12 links, do we know them very well? Could we even list them? And if we can rattle off a list, can we explain what they are well? And even if we can, have we attained realization of them? And in every point, we remind ourselves that there are many others in the world who can list, for example, the 12 links, who can explain what they are and who have gained realization. And we haven't, so why are we seeing ourselves as superior? So second technique, the first antidote would be to remind us of ourselves of the many things we don't know. The second technique would be, as mentioned earlier, to recall the qualities that others have. Whether those qualities are apparent to us or not, doesn't mean that they don't possess qualities. Our observance of something isn't required for them to exist. And secondly here, knowing that they have qualities, and qualities that we are yet to develop, and that we can use this to counteract our pride. And in fact, we can use it to generate love and kindness for them through thirdly, thinking how it's independence on being such as this person before us, that I have developed the good qualities that I have and can now develop further good qualities such as independence on them, counteracting the arisal or the affliction of pride.
Jimmy Yamera Shuchi, Geshe Thubten Rabten, then Jiggy Sosoy, Bendigo, Yawacha, Mevata, Dinishida, Jimbetane, Jiggy Garsori, Benju Lonju said, Zuma said that Jimbatana, Hastana, Jibu, Lonju, and Yosa Maris and Big Lota Jagi, Ninga Yorvata, Dinigi Tusin, Yosa Maritas and Bedine, some little children, the Shishing, or some little children. Or that is out in the Maris and Lamsa, Jambi Tenji, or that is Sanyi, and Jimbatan, the longevity, Ungudes, Sanyi, Sumo, she's a Sanyi said, Kunzi, and Kundi, she's a Sanyi, Kohata, the June said it's out near your mother, she's a Dembale, Sanyi Sunet. She's that Sosorana, Hamado, Sanyi Sunati, Dembale, she's a detended USMB. Do some Tavina, Nanzuki, Lokta Maki, Kavarin, the Lokta Jikta, Mara Yungura, the Tapare Sambiki, or that is the Yungura, the Chiki, Zambuling said, Chikarna Chik, Joy can you make Manzuki? She's not that Tapa Mendos and Bigi, Zambuling said, is all right. Zambuling. She's not Tapa in Seres, somebody who has in the car, Manzo Gaziki, and the Kokazeki, Mi Gazeki, Yaki, Walashina. Somebody in the Hadirua. She's not because I can name she's a Tapa and Sebi, and some of your cigarette. The names and desert, and Mitawa, you are to be about, and the Kichi, you are to be Mitawa, some Tavana, Taparis and Melody, daughter, a check Kavamura. The names are like Yomoba Kareki, the Horon Coronia, Kudu, Yakaptelia, and Kayagi, and then on the Nimbati, and those Jambiki, Gentua Chipu.
And towards the affliction of wrong views, of which there are such a wide variety of wrong views. For example, if one thinks, well, I've heard these teachings that from practicing generosity one accumulates the causes that leads to, for example, material abundance in our future lives and good circumstances for practicing Dharma. But I don't think so. I can't observe this. This actually seems to be contrary to what I've experienced. I think this is nonsense. So this would be considered a wrong view because it's contrary to the actual presentation of the Dharma, the correct views as presented in the Dharma. So when our introspection notices the arisal of a wrong view such as this, then we need to immediately rely on mindfulness to recall that firstly, an affliction is our true enemy. It presents grave danger. And therefore we need to apply an antidote such as Well, Buddha Shakyamuni taught this. And Buddha Shakyamuni taught the complete and unmistaken path. So therefore, this is a correct teaching, even if I cannot ascertain it directly for myself right now. So in dependence on my trust in the validity of Buddha Shakyamuni and his teachings, I can accept this now. Or if I really am struggling, I shouldn't reject it entirely, but rather just put it aside. So this is a way to skillfully deal with the wrong view. And again, there are many in the world. We see things that are impermanent as being permanent. So something that some will view the world as permanent. They will say, well, the world always exists. For lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, beings have been born on this world and will continue to be so. The world is permanent. The Buddha taught it's not. It changes momentarily. So even if one can't perceive it for oneself, doesn't mean it is not. So these are many other examples of wrong views, but the meaning here is we need to rely at all times and in all circumstances, whether we're with others or alone, on introspection and mindfulness, always on the guard for our true enemy, the afflictions. And as soon as one arises, we notice this with introspection, to then use its companion of mindfulness, reminding us of the danger, firstly, of the danger of the affliction, and secondly, of the relevant antidote, and apply it and destroy that affliction.
kudu di nyomo che lamsa nga zo zo chi la ta nyomo chi re chi lamsa ha wa na nyem ba ten thuya di de skale ha wa chang de chi san nyem ma nye le na zo ge da jang do ro su ma sa na jang do ro chi mang bu che wo cha go ro da gom shi mang bu gong go sam dang go ro chi san dine sam dang wa na sam dang gom shi cha wa na nyomo chi ro chi ha go da lamsa o de nyem ba di go sam ta na lamsa ta di go ro cha go ro chi san dine za nye le na zo ge jang do ro ma sa na几个样的样都今天也不点他的什么大呀的，我在牛空着见呢，很什么的是当过过的，对下见呢什么的是当过过的，这边南上了这个第年人呢，买几年人啊，这个公司讲多少钱的结清不清过的，但慢慢的嘛说呢，讲多少要不去问呢，如果个人呢买进来东地不，但怎么的嘛说呢，讲多少要不去问呢，怎么这样的要不这图也清过了，讲多少没呢，我就口头的了，见什么的来的怎么这图嘛了，安定哪人清过了吧。
In all walks of life, where someone wants to do well, they have to train and develop a skill. Without doing so, they will not be able to do it well at all. And if they wish to be able to be effective in situations of great importance, such as perhaps soldiers who will find themselves in life-threatening situations, or those in emergency services who have to perform flawlessly because lives depend on their performance. Or if it's something very mundane, such as success in the sporting arena, people will train again and again, repeatedly over a sustained period. So for ourselves, who aim to root out the subtlest forms of afflictions that we have become habituated to since beginningless lives, and do so in order to achieve the greatest of goals, complete enlightenment for the sake of others, we have to train and train well. Because without training, it won't be possible to be able to even notice the arisal of the affliction until long after it has dominated us and perhaps even dissipated. But without a doubt, if we train ourselves well in recognizing or understanding what is an affliction, understanding its grave danger, and then understanding what the antidote is, and training in that, becoming familiar with that, as we develop great habituation to these various steps, then no matter what we are doing, whether we are busy and interacting with others, we will be able to identify the arisal of the affliction, because we'll know what an affliction looks like, what it feels like, what situations are that it arises in. And then, in dependence on introspection, noticing the arisal of the affliction, mindfulness will be able to remind us quickly of the grave danger we are in. and of the antidote, the correct antidote to apply, and that would be an antidote we have trained in, and therefore it can dominate the arisal of that affliction and eliminate that affliction.
Dini Radha Jugi Chandul Che Tela, Namana Sosuchi Jugi, that's Sosa Campana Sosuchibura, Tudi Gabla, some time that Dirwada and Chandu Chiti, the control Masano, control Party, control de Guinchi Taji, control Digi, control Savana, Sosukibu, Makiwa Suata, and the Shen Makiwa Sua, and DJ on the control the shoe church Rovana, and the chick Nana Tsutea, and Luigi Gone, and the chick Pa Chiki. 양치기 증야다 되게 괜찮은 오전에 안 되게 라신이가 강아 수도와 시 컨트롤해야 자고 그냥 기주에 민도와서 되게 컨트롤이 괜히 봐 삼단에 컨트롤이 괜히다 컨트롤이 매워서야 아니 간에 수요고도 쓰는 잠재 공부도 시간에 잠마다 제와 공부했나 컨트롤이 기면 제산되는 인자 시간에 잠마다 제와 공부도 섬지 시간에 잠재 공부하다 다 잠재 공부하디 디시에 바나신 저기 자바 제고 그 자와 제고 김천디게 현실에 맞아라리아 진체보다 그린 첨부 아니 지금 사치 뭐 휴지래야 제사 현실에 현실 차상에 디기 거야다 누가 미디어 봐서 포도에 디기 주나 선배 삼나다 너고지 누가다 자나 선배 삼나도 다는 컨트롤이 괜다 아니 컨트롤이 괜데 니도조 잠재 공부를 했으면 삼다제 안주기 잠재게 도 시면은 나는 장도를 도 시에 차기와 언디나신 만주기 지게 되샤로 전에 유라 차바께바나 지산 도 차바께바나 유가래는 차바께바나 차바 디원게 차바 슈체세 신세 라다 신이가 뇌바다 아니지 메도로스 마산 차바 슈체는 메도도 권 바고한 기르에 어디 중에 기지 권 기르에 내가 여러분 되는 권에 기는 메도 뇌로 그 메도 여바데 메와 차로 미샤다 있는 거 미 셈마지고 시고로 되는 자 차바디게 되는 지나는 시간에 뇌도 라나 뇌 라신이가 뇌도 차바디 기네데 자기는 지금도 셈베게 근데 제사다 차바마기에 토시 가지고 올라는 제사 차바기에 가르치는 그 미다와상다데 기지기 지바 때문에 말에 제사 땡기 그 강남마디에게 땡기 따바데 말에 그 유주고래 셈베게도 유와 미다와상다야다 안딜에 안에 미두바상다야다 언도스에도 공부를 했으면 안디네게 상다잖아 주야 두세 차베기 괜다 안디도 쳐다 내려야 먼저 미다바 공미하다 아니야 될 미두바 공미하도 선도 미다바 공네도 공고로 하다 공네가 제 공네 자외네 나고 슈셰 저도로 언도 지나가는 저게 다 장도를 쳐야 돼 되네게 장도를 쳐야 있나 나야 괜찮지와 아직 되네게 다시 되네다 컨트롤 사격이 하고 시신게 하고선 남사 어디디 디고마다 선배게 남사 젠투에 차기로 젠투교도 남사 어디디 삼디 당고에서 비참바디 젠투에 차고 진짜 니니나 먼저 당번에 장도를 쳐거든 기치 못 차고 예신 어두스레 인사로다
way I encourage you to develop these good qualities within yourselves is firstly, here in the teaching situation, to hear and reflect on these teachings. Secondly, then on your cushion, to engage in the meditations that are outlined. Because this is how we form that great habituation. Then the third step, in class, on the cushion, and the third step is when one is alone in one's home, when one is not distracted by many activities, but just going about one's daily activities, or if one's out in society on one's own, then one is less distracted. So watch your mind as you're going about your daily activities. Use introspection then. Watch your mind. And as soon as you notice the arisal of an affliction, apply the antidote. And if you train in these three steps, one here in teaching, secondly on the cushion, and then thirdly whilst going about your daily activities, you'll quickly start to see yourself becoming more skilled in noticing your mental activity, and you'll notice yourself in being more skilled in being able to overcome the afflictions. And as the skill grows, you will then be able to watch your mind in more difficult circumstances, such as when with others. And in this way, you'll be able to have a better impact on others, keeping your mind unafflicted, keeping your mind virtuous whilst interacting with others. So this is the sequence to train in. Then moreover, in your reflections, you need to reflect firstly on the faults of the afflictions. This is important. What one needs to understand with vivid clarity is who our enemy is. It's not someone else, it's not certain circumstances, it's our own afflicted minds. And the source of these is our self-cherishing mind. It's this, the selfish intent, the self-obsession. This is what causes us harm in this life and others harm. This is what causes us suffering in our future lives and prevents our ability to spiritually progress and be of benefit to others. So here in the meditation, we need to gain vivid clarity that what causes us suffering now and in the future is not what others say or do or our circumstances, but it's our way of thinking. So this is important. Then, secondly, train in the antidotes. So we recognize, firstly, the danger that the afflictions pose to us. And then having recognized that we'll want to be able to overcome them, so we train in the antidotes, such as we've heard in the earlier session about reflecting on the great kindness of others, and using this as a basis, as cherishing of others, to develop love and compassion. And there are many other antidotes we've heard and briefly mentioned today and in other teachings, such as with regard to attachment, that we need to understand that attachment exaggerates good qualities. And an attachment comes about in relation to the widest variety of objects, even just a simple flower. And when attachment arises towards an object, we exaggerate its qualities, believing that if we possess it, we will achieve happiness. Happiness exists somewhere within our possessing of this flower. And this can lead us then to picking it and keeping it for ourselves, thereby depriving others. In this way, we come to see the role of self-cherishing and attachment in even something as small as a beautiful flower. So seeing the faults of attachment, we reflect on the antidotes such as impermanence or the unsatisfactory nature of the exaggerated good qualities of the object, that the object can never provide us with the lasting happiness that we mistakenly believe it can. So here we need to reflect on the antidotes repeatedly over a sustained period, reflect on the faults of the afflictions repeatedly over a sustained period, because this will lead to us being ever on guard against the dangers of the afflictions. And the mind of introspection thereby, whilst guarding us from the arisal of the afflictions, also ensures that our mind stays virtuous. So if we've been training in love, for example, keeping our mind loving and kind towards others. So this means our mind, through the utilization of introspection and mindfulness, our mind will stay virtuous, which means we have space for others, we have kindness towards others, our mind is peaceful and calm. In this way, with the mind being naturally joyous, we can go about our daily activities, we can interact with others. So here we see how introspection and mindfulness not only guards us against the arisal of the afflictions, but also keeps our mind virtuous.
닝제다 안 자주 셈딩아 주냠레치 디냠레 야고 고고래 디 야고 요야라 안디 산조고 버터발라 디니게 잠니 자주 셈냠레 마제바이나 산조고 버터 투마르와 진네 장아주 잠니제다 자주 셈냠레 제바이나 산조고 버터바이네 토모도바이나 디냠레 제비 링라 랑이 기와차도 미션달라 차상 기와차다 안에 기와치마 삼다바이네 기와치마 소소 지게 미리 가서 电商投呀电商不投呀按电商为电了呀我就去年了呀讲这个年了这现在判不出推给电那个采购吧电用过的电那张讲年纪大讲就先要不用了让接着这个落的多少钱先接把这个落的给我的是其实他先接把这个落的给我了你看这么当我是那我就先的呗嘛是给人吃不的给钱不应把的那我这里samdai dire de shi sheba na ji shan la de ne ga zu gi che ti gi tun yin in da ka ne shan la de ne yong gu shan la de ne ra gu chi za shan se de ra na tin chi ge chi bu shu re sha samda ra jam je ko mi ya de ni je ko mi ya da ane jin bi nyam le ju chu jim nyam le ju so so ge ju nyam le ja ge wa ya ja de shan la de ne yong de shan de be ma za chi bo da ge chi bu shu re sha sam je shan yu yuan den da ji za chi mu ji yu de da shan de jam je zo da de ya hu chi da bu ge ko le 잠바다 제와치 누고 강아 마트에 지체 고도 점제 삼다디 니고 데두 시는 저기 다삼로 단에 자야디 디제도 와도 되게 아주 랑 지진 권 랑 지진 삼로 권다 현 지진의 지진들 연된다 한 현 지진 삼로 계획이 된다라 현디 자침보다 느끼는 지부 임바도 금진되게 안에 야도 삼다도 랑 지진이 삼랑 현 지진 삼바디 해야 되기 근데 현 지진 삼바디는 현라 잠바다 제와 아니 랑래 빼 뭐지 진치 보인다 파래 그진 껴야다 아니 야부지 와대 차고로 진내자 현라 잠바 제와 곰 어두시도 곰에 곰지셔 직제 근데 되네지지 곰 제제야라 아 가브리엘야 소소 녀모다 되네기 콘르의 기기도 민데 시진이 제바 제도 도시나 어다 콘르의 교회나 녀모 교회다데 아니 콘르게나 아니 대시 셰바나 잠제 공고야다 여자께는 미두바다 아니 미다고 공부야 안도시 나게 공부가 있는 데라 잠재 공부하다 아직 이 감나 기체다 디니게 삼당과 도시는 삼당야 되게 안도시는 제국고래 삼장수시 안에 양도 도시 대원서 지게 소소에 나올 되어 있나다 소소 지고다 요아 가디 되면 디가블라 수세 로야 양도를 해야 돼 셈을 양도를 해야 돼 디차고로다 나도 디 랍제디 나도 나도 상마 다 디니게 장도를 제야를 비주 제화데 다 나도 제고고 나도 차상 지바래 나라다 결혼해서 차상 대 지바 제고고와 어두시네 제데 게치 뭐 차고래 근데 나도 디를 랍제 해야 돼 나 삼다이데 디레샤다 디링이 해야 돼
Now, our two talks then today, we've spoken about the essence of Buddha's practice, or we've spoken about what it actually means to practice the teachings of the Buddha. And that is to train our mind. To train our mind means to develop our mind so that it becomes habituated to virtuous, positive ways of thinking, and at the same time do so through weakening our habituation to non-virtuous, to harmful, to afflicted ways of thinking. And in our context of aspirants to the paths of the Mahayana, it's imperative that when we reflect on the faults of the afflictions, to remind ourselves that at their basis is the self-cherishing mind. This is the primary obstacle that bodhisattvas strive to abandon. So us as aspirants should be aware of its pervasive nature, and thereby strive to overcome it too. Later, when in dependence on one's training, when one sees the arisal of an affliction such as attachment or anger or pride or whichever, also remind yourself that this has come from the self-cherishing. It's this wish to fulfill our own needs first and foremost, even at the expense of others, that has led to the arisal of the affliction. So include this in your reflections. And remind oneself that as to the extent that one is noticing the frequency that the afflictions arise, and the strength of these afflictions, that is an indicator of the strength of one's self-cherishing. So therefore, not only do we need to overcome the afflictions, but we need to get at the self-cherishing and eliminate that. And we do so through the application of the antidotes, in particular, the other cherishing mind, the mind that cherishes others. Here, now in summarizing what we've looked at, key component is to understand that our enemy, what causes us harm now and in the future, what prevents our spiritual development, is the afflictions. And whenever we are disturbed or upset about something other than our afflictions, we need to be aware of that, need to be aware that we are misdiagnosing the cause for our unhappiness. It's our afflictions that cause us to suffer now and in the future. And the key antidote here is to reflect on the kindness of others. Because when, to the extent that we appreciate others as kind and we hold others as dear and we feel an affection for others, we will not want to harm others that we feel close to, that we feel affection towards. Because we recognize that this is someone who, just like me, desires happiness, and they have as much right as happiness in this moment as I do. And moreover, this person has shown me so much kindness, directly and indirectly, in this and past lives, and will continue to do so. And therefore, it's wholly inappropriate to respond to them in their time of need in a way other than with kindness. So in dependence on us, the success and the skill we've developed in reflecting on the kindness of others, we'll become habituated to relating to others with a feeling of closeness and care. This is how we need to train ourselves. Focus on the faults of the afflictions, seeing that they are our true enemies with the self-cherishing at its root, and train in the antidotes. And training the antidotes within the context of wanting to develop the other cherishing mind. And this comes about in dependence on reflecting on the kindness of others. And this is the basis to generate love and compassion towards others. And train like this through hearing teachings and reflecting whilst hearing those teachings, taking this onto your meditation cushion, reflecting there, becoming habituated to this way of thinking, and doing so especially when you're on your own and less distracted, gaining familiarity with your inner workings, with your inner world, being aware of whether one's mind is virtuous or afflicted. When it's virtuous, maintaining the virtuous mind. When afflictions start to arise, apply the antidotes. And as one does this and becomes skilled in this, habituated to this, this is showing that we are practicing the Buddha Dharma. And we will then have a mind that is ever more peaceful, ever more undisturbed, ever calmer, more open towards others, more receptive towards others, spacious towards others, gentle and accepting towards others, and loving towards others no matter how they are relating to us. So through relying on introspection and mindfulness, with them becoming our true friends, our ever-present companions, we live a life of great meaning. And then whenever we are, whomever we are with, whatever we are doing, our mind stays happy and peaceful. So it's my sincerest wish that you train like this repeatedly over a sustained period. This is how I try and train myself, and I commit to training like this for the rest of my life. And it's my sincerest hope that you do too.
Alright, that's Sanyi ne also share the that Jim Simjin that chicken also Nambata the dick two way na and Delia and Chicus that's a biggie Gomiaki Yamanchi or Essachi Dinigi and Chiti or share.
So tomorrow we'll continue in the text when it comes to the part of the text, how to deal with difficult circumstances, in particular when we deal with people that we currently find difficult, how to deal with these situations in a skillful manner. Thank you.